I'm gonna connect Podbeam in as well.
Okay.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Good afternoon and welcome. It's I know you see up there that we have breaking news, but it's really not breaking news. But we wanted to come live and we want to talk a little bit about how to protect your First Amendment rights. You know, First Amendment right. It is a constitution of several things. But for this particular broadcast, we want to look at hate speech versus hate violence, and we understand the difference between hate violence. And the reason for this conversation is, see, that's what I was talking about. Instagram. I am sorry. I don't. I mean, I don't know what's going on. I'm gonna have to. Figure out why the USC code is not. The URL code is not working to let them to join in. We done tried several different things, but anyhow, back to the topic of the day, and the conversation for today is dealing with hate hate speech, actually. And we're going, I know I got up there, how to protect your First Amendment rights. Well, one of the first things that you need to do is that the law has kind of it's kind of made some things a little difficult, because there's a lot of loopholes in into what constitutes uh uh hate speech. And it has a variable on it that kind of like makes it, a little difficult. One of the things I found out, and one of the things that was said to me, well, what is the difference between or actually uh, uh how how is it that what makes or what constitutes uh the difference between, let's say, press uh free press and public speech. Well, what I found was that the free press, it's protected. It was actually constituted to protect the public and information and opinions, and apply to a wide variety of media. And looking into that, what I found out was that it was very simple, that the lawmakers have given a broader or a wider perspective to publicists, that they can use certain terminology, that they can present speech in a different way than we can at the public. Is that the Supreme Court ruled that the First Amendment protected against prior restraint, pre-republic, republication, uh, censorship, in almost all cases. The Here's the thing: it causes the protections, the right to pursue all branches of agencies or governments for action, in addition to the rights of assembly, guaranteed by this cause. The courts has also ruled that the amendment implicates the protection for freedom, of association. And the thing about it is, although the First Amendment right applies only to, state actors, this is a common this is a common misconception that is, prohibited, that it prohibits anyone from limiting free speech, and that's where we come in, and uh, we have to identify. Okay, when we're talking specifically about, let's say, racism, um, or we're trying to apply or make a comment or a what's the word I'm looking for? A comparison to one race to another race. Uh, you know, it includes, private non-government entitlements. Moreover, the Supreme Court, they have determined that the protection of speech is not absorbed. I'm waiting for my guests to get back so we can have a brief discussion on this, and I'll give you the layout. I wanted to give you just an insight of what your of how the government proceeds or perceive uh the rights, okay, of free speech, which is in the Constitution under the First Amendment. And it's crazy. I mean, it's so crazy. The chat lines are open if you want to make a comment. Welcome me in Facebook, welcome me in YouTube, Twitter, welcome, Twix. We had invited Instagram in, but for some reason the connection is not going in our favor. But as my special guest, we do have Jamel Smith. He's better known, AKA, as the Messenger,
Mhm.
and he's going to be talking with us on this subject here. Man, you want to go ahead, and then I'll give some differences
Yeah.
between what constitutes uh, a hate crime versus hate speech, and I'm really focusing on the hate speech. And the reason I'm focusing on that is on our last broadcast of the Keep Hope Alive show, have parents gotten too soft part two. If you want to, you can go and you can look at it on our YouTube channel, Elder Joe Smith Sr., and you can judge for yourself whether or not that content carried any type of hate speech. Um, we were suspended from over on TikTok because of that conversation. We got a 7-day suspension. We reviewed the video. We didn't really see anything in the conversation that constituted any hate speech. It was just that we were comparing on how parents parent back in the days from slavery on up until now. And I don't know. I'm gonna let you judge it. I want to let you uh make your comments on it, and get your thoughts and see what you think. I gotta go over and get our Podbean family and get them in. Uh, Man, I'm gonna let you introduce yourself and give a little bit about what you thought about that broadcast.
Um, Pretty much from what was said. Um, I had my thoughts. By the way, I'm Jamel Smith, Pastor Jamel Smith. I'm a husband, a father of five. Um, Elder Joe Smith is my father. If some didn't know, now you know. And Yeah, man. The topic is the, First Amendment, right? Who
Yeah,
has what was taking place on your broadcast that day is I think it was wrong, to be silenced like that, uh in a lot of ways. Um, but given the sensitivity of words like we had spoke about earlier,
right.
there's a lot of things that we could dive into and look into and, just say, okay, was it fair? Was it not fair? I'll say it was totally legit because the conversation wasn't being directed at anyone in any manner. It was just being generalized, you know. It wasn't like you were talking directly to someone or disrespecting someone or, you know, showing hate crime or, using foul language against anyone. But we do live in a sensitive world now where certain things we are not allowed to say. Certain actions we are no longer allowed to do. So, are we really living under our First Amendment? Do we have those rights as we once did years ago? So much has changed over the decades, like, from me growing up and understanding the way language was and the way we spoke to one another. The world has become very, very sensitive when it comes to this First Amendment topic. Mm,
And what I
yeah,
wanted to do was I wanted to get a clear definition of what constitutes a hate speech. When we first looked at it and the reasoning that was given to us uh, concerning the suspension, it was a it was clearly, hate nature that they suspended us. And let me see if I can go and get the exact quote of what their terminology was concerning uh, the suspension. And let me look back here. Let me look back here just a little bit here.
my daughter is blasting the TV. Give me 1 second. Like she's not sitting right in front of it.
Oh my goodness. Okay. All right. That's the way that they classified it for the reasoning. It was because portion of the contents uh violated their community rights, and I guess it was offensive to it had to been offensive to somebody in order for them to report it in that manner. uh it was, reported as a hate speech. So I wanted to see what was the difference. What is it, hate speech versus freedom of speech? Under the Constitution of the First Amendment, it gives us the right of freedom of speech. And this is the one thing that Jamel and I was talking about. Well, what really constitutes, freedom of speech? Where are we limited? What really is free speech? I mean, if we think about it in our carnal mind, free speech is we're able to say what, is on our minds. We're able to actually speak what we feel is whether truthful or factual. uh and evidently it is uh evidence that we are limited to what we are allowed to say how broad of a spectrum that we have with freedom of speech. And when you really look at it, it does not align with the Constitution in the First Amendment because the First Amendment guarantees me free speech. As long as I'm not attacking or I am committing uh, advancement of causing harm or causing damage, physical or yeah, well, that's about the only way to put it. Physical damage, which then constitute as a hate crime. Uh, but if I don't agree with your organization, I under the Constitution of the First Amendment, I certainly the way it is written and drew up, I certainly have a right and protected under that right. I'm supposed to be
Right.
protected under that right to speak my mind. But here is what is being said. One common definition of hate speech is it is an form of expression through which speakers intend to verbalize, harm, humanize, or uh, in what's the word I want to use? Uh, increase harm against a group or a class of persons on the basis of race, religion, skin color, sexual identity, gender identity, you know, uh, disabilities, or national origin. You know,
Mhm.
court the courts has ruled on these things, and that's where it hits. Now, what they have in there, they have this: what is hate speech, and is it protected by the First Amendment? Freedom, free speech,
Mhm.
rights, and responsibilities. This was a question that was asked by the University of Wisconsin, in Milwaukee, and it says, what is example of what is hate speech, and is it protected by the First Amendment? Well, here's what they found: hate speech may be offensive and harmful. However, it is generally protected by the First Amendment. Ah, one common definition of hate speech is any form of expression through which speakers, and they go back and they just pretty much cover what I just said, with the identity of groups, religion, skin color, and etc. uh they go on to say restrictions on hate speech would conflict with the First Amendment protections of the freedom of hate speech, the protection of freedom. Hate speech would conflict with the well, I just let me get hate speech would conflict with the First Amendment protection of freedom of expression. Since public universities are bound by the First Amendment, public universities must adhere to these rulings. However, universities also have an obligation to create a safe, increased learning environment for all members of the campus community. So, what is that? What did that say to you?
Back to me.
Yes, sir. You the
Oh,
guest.
oh, I'm sorry. I thought you was just you know, making a statement. What does it say to me? Yeah, it's I'm trying to say this correctly. Um, we have so many differences, like you know what I mean. You know, in those situations, um, it's like I guess it's mainly like who you're speaking to at the time. Does that make sense?
I mean, yeah, it would make sense to me, but I mean,
Like,
according to the research, you
mm-hmm.
know, it just it clearly states, that these are are considerations in the minds. Even the courts in the United States has found that expressions generally cannot be punished based on its content or viewpoint.
Well, see, when they say expressions, expressions could be like people could hold up their middle fingers, people walking around and driving around with signs that says F Joe Biden, that is a freedom of speech. That is an expression of speech. Um, and that's what I mean. It's like, who are you talking to? Depends on who you talk. Like, and they allow that. So, like, for instance, there was a time where me and my brother we did a song, and it consisted of the content was talking about COVID. Um, and we put the song up, and it was banned. And we dug deep into it. We called the people and was like, "Yo, why was our song banned?" Oh, no, you can't talk about COVID. It's like we can't talk about COVID. Like, why can't we talk about COVID? It's something that's happening right now.
Hmm.
So they literally blocked us from putting our song out there. Even with the name, even having the name as the title, they made us change the title. So we had to almost like put it in secret. Like, we had to come up with like some type of
Hmm.
like antonym or something like that for it. And it was just it took us like months to really get this song on YouTube. This is YouTube. It took us like, why is it so hard? Like every time we changed it, they found another reason to stop us, and we just called it something else. We called the album something else, and we just changed it. And
Uh-huh.
there's really nothing at that point they could have done because of the wording. So I like I said, it depends on your setting. It depends on your audience. Depends on who you're talking to. It's a bunch of things because they never said that we couldn't talk about it. They just said the title. You have to change the title of the song. Like
Hmm.
that's crazy. But um now that gets passed on, right? That gets passed on, and now the lyrics got stopped from being shared in like certain countries and certain states in the United States of America. They banned it from being played in certain areas because now the lyrics of our content is violating government rights. That's what they hit us with, and I was like, yo, there's no way around this. It's like we went through the first changing the title. Now it's like it's up there still, but it's only it could only reach a certain amount of people. It's like what like like our freedom of speech is limited to in certain areas in certain like places. It's limited, you know, uh, and it's a shame because this is our First Amendment, the right to speak what we want. But like you had Public Enemy number one, who were like great pioneers in rapping, like you know what I mean, and
Hmm.
they spoke out against the government, and basically they intervened and just shut them down. You know what I mean? Tupac Shakur, another great pioneer in rapping, like hip hop. They shut him down. I told you about Eminem when Eminem
Right.
would speak and talk about certain things in his songs, and it was like shut down. But but it's okay for these rappers to talk about killing each other. It's okay for them to talk about disrespecting women. It's okay for them to disrespect religion. It's okay for them to talk about drugs and sex, and that's okay, because we're making money off of it. As long as we can make money off of what you're saying, that's golden. But now, if you speak against anything that contradicts what we're trying to do or trying to accomplish, nah,
History.
we got to shut that down. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
History,
Here,
Black
here,
History Month. We're
yeah.
given 1 month to talk about what actually happened to Black African Americans for over 400 years. We're only given that
Hmm.
that 1 month. We're giving 1 month of liberty to actually say how we feel. After that,
Right.
the other 11 months, we don't want to hear it. This is what I don't want to say the world, but kind of what the government, restricts us from. Nah, we don't want to hear that. Black Lives Matter. We don't want to hear that neither. That was one of the strongest movements that actually was out. And I was just telling my wife yesterday, I was like, yo, it's crazy because it's like, what happened to that movement? What
Well, see,
happened?
this is what the First Amendment is supposed to restrict against. It's supposed to stop the government from restricting that type of freedom of speech.
Well, I don't know if it restricts them.
Well, according to the research, yeah, it does. I mean, this is the whole meaning. According to the research, this is the whole meaning of freedom of speech,
Right,
covered and protected under the First Amendment.
right. Well, like we said,
Now,
we could go in like, yep, go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, I mean, it's just like, in their research, it said, you know, what speech is not protected by the First Amendment? Okay, let's look at that. All right.
Hmm.
What speeches are not, what speeches are not, and what words, as you're talking about these rappers and all this,
Hmm.
what is protected to them, accordingly under the First Amendment? Look at what the research said. Obscenity, that's a violation. Child pornography, that's a violation. De
Defamation.
defeminatory,
Hmm.
yeah, of speech, that's a violation. False advertising is a violation. True threats is a violation. And fighting words is a violation. So everything that you mentioned there, and I gotta, and according to research, I gotta push back on, is that is not protected. According to research, that is not protected under the First Amendment right.
Sorry, my phone. Like, okay, sorry. Right. Okay. I understand. But like I said, it's not protected under the amendment, right? But it's what they allow because that's just, I don't
And
think
I
they
get it.
allow, like, I know you said something about, I think you said child pornography or something like that. And
Yes.
the first
Yes.
first certain, like, there's the first few ones that you said, that, like, feminizing, like we said, there's certain words, like, you can't call a homosexual gay, you can't call them the F word, fag, or anything like that. That will actually, that is
Obscenity within general obscenity. Anything that is used with obscenity is not covered under the First Amendment right.
right.
And a lot of the hardcore rappers, as you
But
were as you were
hmm,
saying, I
hmm,
mean, I'm agreeing with you, calling, females out of their name,
female
using,
dogs,
yeah,
hoes, tricks,
yeah,
all that.
you
Yeah.
know, and talking about,
But how can
gang
you?
violence with shooting down this one
But
and
watch.
shooting down that one. Go
How
ahead.
can how? All right. So in this sense, right? How can we defend something that the people actually allow? So this is what the government says. Hey, it's working. They like it. They don't have a problem with it. It makes the money. Why not? You said it's like we could overlook that. Like, you know what I mean? It's like certain things we could overlook. It's what the public actually makes. a big deal. I like watch if people stood up and said we are not going to tolerate women being disrespected and called female dogs. We want to put a petition in for this, right? Let's just
Hmm.
say they did that. By law, if that was something that was petitioned and the Congress, government, they all passed that bill to women are not allowed to be called bitchs anymore. Call a woman a bitch and watch what happens now.
Well, it's sort of like what happened with the N word, and they
Right,
had to change it in the dictionary. So now
right.
you can't use the N word because that's protected under the First Amendment
But
right as hate speech and
right.
also hate crime.
And it's the same thing as calling a female a bitch, which is in the dictionary defined as what? A female
A
dog.
female dog.
So I can't stop you from saying something for what it means, but it that doesn't mean that a woman is a dog. Like you get what I'm saying? So it's
Yeah,
like
I get it.
it's a
I get it
it's a
totally.
crazy
And it's
it's a crazy battle. Like when it comes down to what do we have the rights to say and what we cannot, what are we allowed to say and what are we not allowed to say? Like
right.
you know,
And when we looked at the video and we
uh-huh.
saw the contents and the violation that they considered being hate speech
Mhm.
is all we were comparing was the difference between a Negro in the slave back in slavery being put into the house.
Right.
And we all know what that meant. And even if you look in the history book, you look under the definition of a Negro being placed in the house, it will tell you very clearly that they were considered a house nigger. And and
Right.
and and that was the only thing that one of my guests had made a comparison to
Mhm.
how when the black woman was put into the house
Mhm.
as a slave and
Mhm.
was made to raise the white child and
Mhm.
care to the white child, how respectful that child was.
Mhm.
That was the only thing. It was a comparison unto how now today, where the law has changed and taken discipline out of the home. And the comparison was back then more whites was being placed in prison than blacks,
Mhm.
to where now it has reversed to where there are now more blacks being put in prison than there are whites. So
Mhm.
it was a comparison. All my guest was doing was making a comparison of then and now. I mean, it's just
Right.
like I take a portrait of, look, this is what it looked like before. Here's what it looks like now.
Mhm.
And they constituted that, and evidently it whoever was listening in, or whoever was in the chat, or whatever, became offended of the comparison.
Mhm.
And it's one thing about TikTok that I will say is a change that needs to be made on their behalf. When somebody reports a violation, before they suspend the creator, they need to first look at it and then determine whether or not it was a violation, instead of just taking the action and suspending a creator based on someone's let me say heartbreak uh that they received because they felt offended.
He said heartbreak. That's funny. But listen, David Chappelle, let's talk about freedom of speech. I forget which comedy geez. He had
Wasn't that his
a
return
competent
after his
like
drug
yeah, he
addiction?
no, he had no drug addiction. He went to Africa.
Ah, I
He
mean, I
escaped
read,
to
I
Africa.
read he, I read he slipped into a mental state and
You
kind of
talking
like
about
had a
you talk are you talking
had a
about
breakdown, wasn't it?
you
No, that
probably
was Chappelle.
no, not Chappelle. You talking about Martin Lawrence. Um,
I read
Martin
about
Lawrence.
Chappelle,
No, yeah,
and
Chappelle had no.
HBO did a special on him about maybe 4 or 5 years ago on his comeback, and Chappelle
Mm,
even talked about his breakdown. He had a mental
mm,
breakdown.
I don't. Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
recall that.
you gotta look that one up, bro.
Yeah, yeah, I'm
You gotta
definitely
look
with.
that one up,
Yeah, I don't
because I
see. I
remember.
can't. I can't see David Chappelle as big of an activist he is, and I know I watched literally every episode of the David Chappelle show, and he was getting like played on his deal uh with the people that he was doing the show with, and I know he ended up leaving, going to Africa for a long time. He left. He went to the motherland. You know, he said after a certain number bracket, you know, you have these people coming at you. He was talking about the Illuminati at the time, and he disappeared. And he said, I had to go back home to actually rejuvenate and go back to the motherland to really find self. And then when he came back, he had like this special on Netflix that um I forgot what network had David Chappelle show
Okay,
at the time, and they had the
let-
network and they released it on Netflix. So he spazzed on Netflix. He went ballistic. He spazzed on Netflix. Netflix ended up taking it down. They had a conversation. They came back to the table. They made a different deal. And he came out with this one special. And this is what he literally said on on his comeback after all that, you know, devastating stuff he went through. It was, I have to watch what I say because people nowadays are sensitive to words. He said, there is no more. This is what he said. He said, if you think you have the right to freedom of speech, you actually don't anymore. And he said, "Why?" He said, I'm going to tell you why. He did an open mic comedy show and he used the word faggot. And they told him that he can't say that. And he said, why? Because it's offensive to the gay community. They don't allow you to say faggot anymore, or you can't call a homosexual person gay. Almost the same thing with the pronouns. If it's a guy that turned into a she and he prefers uh, rather be called she, it's like, you know, now we have to respect these boundaries of the pride, right? But we're not going to get into that um for the sake of time and for the sake of people, right? Now when I heard him for real, when I heard him say that, I was just like, yo, it makes sense. You know what I'm saying? It really makes sense to where we thought what we actually had liberty to speak out on, that now has been taken silently by these unseen organizations, unwritten, unseen written laws and bills that have been passed down without, you know, the world's or people's acknowledgement. Only to those that really seek the knowledge and really know the laws would actually understand these things. The Bible says, my people perish for the lack of knowledge. And this is why it's so deep to really look into these things, because one, you don't want to get caught up, you know, like I understand the whole segment about, you know, parenting and speaking about house Negroes and things like that. It's now we live in a world, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. You can say anything you want, right? But it's how you say it.
mhm,
So now
okay,
a comedian can't be a comedian because now what they're saying, right, being up there, even though it's a
right,
joke, right, they can't be
okay,
themselves now because of certain restrictions on how they say things. So now it's like, okay, now we got to come at this. Okay, so now if I'm gonna talk about uh overweighted people, I can't say fat. Can't call people fat anymore because people get sensitive. So now I got to come up with a more sophisticated way to be funny. Almost like Bill Cosby. If you really watch Bill Cosby comedy shows, I saw an episode where Bill called Eddie Murphy and told Eddie Murphy, like, yo, you can't say things like that. Like, you can't offend people like that. And Eddie Murphy said, if you don't shut the F up, and hung up on him. And I was like, yo, this is crazy because here it is. You have two black African brothers who are at their peak in comedy. Didn't even know that this was going on until I looked into it. Going back and forth about what's okay to say and what's not okay to say, basically. And yeah, man, it took he said the white people gonna get offended if you say things like that. And he was like, well, I don't have a white audience. You know what I'm saying? So
Mm-hmm.
it's
Mm-hmm.
who you like. It goes back to what I said. Who are you talking to in the process? What's your audience like? You know what I'm saying? I know it's crazy as it sounds because you'll have 30,000 white kids at a 50 Cent show, right? You're at a 50
Right.
Cent show, and 50 Cent is like, uh, uh, G Unit, what? We get down. What? Now you saying all this, and they saying all the lyrics that are defying women, that are talking about what we go back to, talking about sex, drugs. Now, if you really look at the rates show that white kids buy more of these hip hop artist tickets than the actual blacks do. You know what I'm
Okay.
saying? And,
Yep.
and any
Yeah, I think your phone kind of popped out on you.
oh,
Well,
can you hear me?
okay.
Your
Yeah.
daughter
Yeah.
called. That
Oh,
was one of your daughters called me. So before you
which
jump in,
one? The
hold on.
baby one?
Nah, the one above the baby. So
Oh, okay.
when we look at this, right? I'm gonna get to the point. When we look at this, right? When we look at the audience, right? If if it's accepted, it's accepted. There's nothing you could do about it, right? There's nothing you
Right.
could do about it when it comes down to the freedom of speech because there. This is what I'm saying. We live in a world to where we pick and choose what is and what isn't. If if somebody, like I said, if a white person was to say something like, "Yo, look at this Negro," right? Would that be more sensitive, or would it affect me more if he said, "Look at this nigger"? Like, you get what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
But then you got 30 white kids, 30 something thousand white kids at a rap concert saying that word,
Right.
right? At
Yeah,
that
okay.
moment, because it's
Okay.
making money for me, I'm giving you the freedom of speech now. I'm as a black artist, I'm giving you a freedom of speech even with my lyrics to say that word. Because now in the hood or anywhere from where we're from, you can't be white saying that word.
Now let me ask you this in a comparison.
Mm-hmm.
Accepted in society and
Mm-hmm.
not social media.
It
Would
can't.
if all of that you just said was being done on social media, do you feel that the outcome would be different
Yeah,
and
it
the
would be.
acceptance would be different?
It definitely would be because now that is controlled by a different uh organization. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's what I mean
Yeah. Yeah.
when we look at freedom of speech. Our freedom of speech is governed by different organizations that we know nothing about, and it's sad because it's like I said, it's in certain places it's okay, and then and maybe in this place over here on the east it's not okay, but it's accepted on the west. You get what I'm saying? But if
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
talking about equality and freedom of speech, then freedom of speech should be the right to say whatever I
Look
want,
at
wherever I
okay.
want, wherever I go.
I'm glad you said that because see, look at what the research says. The research says is hate speech a violation of the First Amendment right? Watch this. Especially the Supreme Court, uh what did I say? The Supreme Court anonymously ref they reaffirmed that, which means they agreed that there is no hate speech, especially to the First Amendment.
Well, that would contradict that's almost like contradicting.
But that's what the government says. That's what the Supreme Court says. The Supreme Court says, is hate speech a violation of the First Amendment? If I just break it down to one simple thing, it would be no. No. I don't have to use all of these other big affirmative word, affirmative action words. I mean, what it boils down to, the answer is simply no. The Supreme Court unanimously. What do unanimously mean? They all
Yeah, it
agree.
overrules. Yeah,
Yeah,
but see, and this
they
is
all agree.
well, I
So
can't. Yep, go ahead.
no. Go ahead.
Um, and that like they're saying they're asking like is this a hate crime against hateful speech? That's like to me that's two different. A hate crime would be like I said, me going across the street punching a white kid in the face just because he has blonde hair and blue eyes. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Freedom of speech means like I should be able to like say whatever I want to this kid and
Well,
that be that. But
that's
that's
what
not
they
the
just
tactic though. Like
but that's what they just said in that segment. Is hate speech a violation of the First Amendment? No. If it's no, that means I should be able to, I'm able to say what I want to say.
you should be able to say what you want to
Because it's
say.
not, because it, according to them now, on
Right.
their anonymous, on their unanimous agreement,
Hmm.
is that whatever I say does, if in that portion of segment, whatever was said in that portion of segment did not constitute a violation of freedom of speech. That's what it clearly says.
Hmm.
And it clearly says I had the right to make that comparison.
Hmm.
I had the right to say
Yeah.
what was said
But like I said, it
because
goes back
it
to
did not constitute
right because
to
it wasn't directed at anybody in a harmful way. So what it comes down to is we could
but
be
see,
talking
here's
about
what they say, Jamel. Here's what they said. They said there is no hate speech exception exceptions to the First Amendment.
hmm
That was clear. They all agreed on there
hmm
was no exception. What they went back and did was they put out what you can't use.
hmm yeah,
And
basically.
and we gave that out, which none of that was used. And it's like you were saying just a minute ago, unless it constitutes if a verbal action or a physical action
Right.
is a threat, now that does not constitute it. I mean, that is not part of the First Amendment. Now that reverts to hate crimes, because now that leads to hate crimes. So I guess we would have to go out and we would have to go back and we would have to look at, hate speech versus hate crime
Right.
in order to make that comparison. But according to the Supreme Court, is whatever comes out of my mouth is not uh mm, it's not a part of the First Amendment. It does not exempt to the First Amendment.
Hmm.
There is no hate speech. And I don't know if they could have done it or worded it different, but when they put it, when they put it the way they put it into the Constitution, there is no hate speech. What did that tell you? You see what I'm saying?
No, I totally understand your argument. I totally understand it. What what I'm we what I'm my point is I totally agree with you. I understand that. My thing is when it goes back to we could say, okay, we looked at it. This wasn't a hateful, comment or hateful
Mm-hmm.
conversation towards any race or anything like that in that manner. Let's just say TikTok
Right.
says that, right? But, sir,
Right.
we have to overview this because someone made a complaint. There was a
Right.
grievance filed against something that you was talking about that somebody took an offense to, and this is our policy. There's nothing that I could go against, regardless of how I may feel about the situation. I could agree with you on it, but this is the policy of our live. When you go live, this is our policy. If somebody says something, then this is what we have to take. If the cops knocked on my door and said, Jamel Smith, you are under arrest for threatening your neighbor, I'm like, what? Look, somebody complained, said you threatened them. That's it. I can't fight them, although I'm innocent, right? My daughter's
Mm-hmm.
here. She know I never knocked on the neighbor's door, made a threat. But if somebody made that phone call, the authorities now they are in authority now to take those precautions to do their job until they figure out what is legit and what isn't legit. Did this man actually
Well,
threaten his
well, well.
neighbor or did they not? What
Can
what
they make that? Can they make that legitimacy right
eh,
there on the
eh, they
on
absolutely
the point
they
on the
absolutely
spot?
can because they have done it. I know somebody that's going through it right now.
Uh, you know,
Honestly,
uh,
this is what I'm saying. And they have the evidence that this person, right,
hmm
never violated any of the party's rights, never threatened any of the parties, but this person was apprehended and released on bond and is now on house arrest, even with the evidence, right? Clearly having the evidence, times, dates, places where this person was, stating that this person did not make these accusations that this person falsely uh, reported on. At the end of
so
the
now they can
day,
turn around. Once they found innocent, they can turn around and sue the police department.
and this is where us following protocol, I assume, comes into play. Things that we have to follow in order to avoid conflict, which then inflicts more consequences on us, even though we're innocent, even though we know, like what I said wasn't wrong, right? But hey, like,
hmm
because they'll go back in their bylaws or they'll go back in their policy and say, hey, look, we sent every 3 months we send out new terms and conditions. Did you read them? Nobody reads them. We only hit okay and we go streaming. We really never read the conditions and we don't know because we never took the time out to educate ourselves on these conditions and terms. So then we find ourselves in situations like this in innocent roles because I do believe you're innocent, but we find ourselves in consequences in these like because we didn't take the extra mile to read X, Y, and Z. It's almost like these contracts
hmm
that we get sucked into and realizing that, oh, I can't opt out. Well, you didn't read it. You can't opt out now. Like you just put your signature on it. Like, so in
Right.
certain
Right.
places, it's just like, so when I'm around, I know I could speak a certain language around a certain crowd. And then when I'm around another crowd, I know the things that I would say to my homies, I can't say to my, you know, guys over here. So
Right.
I mean,
Exactly.
in all, I like I said, freedom of speech should be what it is, freedom of speech. But then if that was something that was really like for everyone, then that means what we like, man, this world would be, there had to be for me, I think I kind of agree with certain things and I don't agree with certain things. There had to be some sort of control in what we can say and what we can't
And
say.
what we can. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. And
it's
I
who
agree.
it goes back to who are we speaking to? Let's take Jesus, for instance, right? What Jesus would say to the Pharisees, he wouldn't say to the people that he was ministering to.
Okay.
You get what I'm saying? But
Yeah.
did
Yeah.
Jesus
Oh,
have the
I'm
freedom?
right there.
Did
I'm
he
right
have the
there.
freedom to speak? Absolutely. He had the freedom to say
Hmm.
whatever he wanted. He could have said whatever he wanted, turned his whole world upside down. But he knew the power of his words and he knew the control, the self-control that he had. And he knew his audience. He knew. He didn't speak to his the way he spoke to his disciples. He spoke to his disciples in parables. But when he
Right.
ministered, he made sure when he was ministering, he made sure the people who weren't as close to him understood directly what he was saying. He never gave them parables when he was ministering to people. He spoke directly into them. But when it came to his
Hmm.
disciples, it was like, yo, how come you always like you don't talk to them like that? How come you talk to me like that? Like, how come you can't talk to me the way you talk to them? It's different.
Right.
It's
Right.
like you should understand where I'm coming from more or less than where these people understand where I'm coming from. So if like my homeboy was talking to me and saying, "Yo, you're mad gay for that," I would understand that compared to where if he could have crossed by somebody and said, "Yo, you're freaking gay for that, bro," and I realized like, "Yo, you're actually talking to somebody that's actually gay and you just offended them."
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
Some gays don't care that you call them gay. They'd be like, "Call me whatever you want." Like
Right.
I am that, and they're proud of. But other people, it just seems like, yeah, I know I'm gay, but I don't need you to announce that I'm gay. Yeah,
Right.
you know
Right.
what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know I'm
I
black,
mean,
but I
I
don't need you
totally.
to announce that I'm like in certain things. If man, I kind of wish we could go back to how it was, but it'll never be that. You know what I mean?
No,
It'll
it
never
won't
be
because the
that.
world is constant revolving, and in
Yeah.
that revolvement is constant change. And I don't think God had intended for the world to go in reverse order, but
Right.
in a forward motion, and
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
have to kind of like flow, with the changes
Right.
that comes about,
It's.
in life. And I was glad you mentioned Jesus and the parables. And one of the things I found out, and I thought that way also, is talking with his disciples and how he talked to them in parables. And then I realized in some study that even though he was talking with the disciples, there were many of them that was around him
Mm-hmm.
at all times, and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of them understood the parables he was speaking and how it made it so plain to them, because a carpenter who didn't know a builder's language and a builder
Mm-hmm.
didn't know a carpenter's language, well, when Jesus spoke, it kind of made it, you know,
It
uh,
clicked.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
because in his parables, he made it to everybody could understand,
Mm-hmm.
dealing even in your little generated life. And so that was awesome. And I think here, with this, how do we protect our First Amendment rights? And I got a closing statement I want to make on that, some closing facts
Mm-hmm.
that I'm going to make on that. But I'm gonna let you give your final thoughts on, and then we're gonna pick up on, we're gonna visit this again,
Definitely. Definitely.
because it really goes even deeper than
Mm-hmm.
what we are talking about right now, because
Mm-hmm.
we understand there definitely need to be some changes amongst the organizations about how they interpret hate speech.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way in which a lot of them don't want, And I can understand why they don't want to be regulated by the government on what they are allowed to implicate into
Mm-hmm.
their community guidelines, because it takes away their self control.
Mm-hmm.
And I get it. I probably, if I was a business owner, probably if I had a social media company, I probably wouldn't want the government
I mean,
regulating, my guidelines.
let me
But
let me
there
tap in on
is
that real
when
quick.
okay, yeah, go ahead.
The fact that, dude, and it just brought me up. What's my man's name that owns Facebook? Zimmer. Uh,
Zimmerman. Is it Zimmerman? No.
nah, it's not
Hold on.
Zimmerman. That's
Hold
that's
on.
the guy I'm thinking of. That's the guy who. Well, the guy who owns Facebook, right? Ted something. I don't know. Um, I came across a video where he's sitting before the government or the
Nope,
Congress,
it
whoever.
is Mark Zimmerman. Mark
Mark
Zimmerman
Zimmerman,
owns
right?
Facebook.
He was being crucified, right? For kids dying because of his social network. But I'm like, he's not the one to be crucified. Why are y'all crucifying this man? He just owns the social media network. He owns it. He doesn't control what people speak or say on the network. So they made him get up and apologize. He said the families of the kids that died from being picked on online and bullied and cyberbullied are here right now. What do you have to say to him? Right? Mark stood up,
Yeah.
turned around, and
Yeah.
said, listen, I apologize. My company is going to work harder on controlling on what is to be said on my network and what can't be said. See,
Right.
watch what I
Right.
just said. The
Yeah.
people stood up, petitioned, they all came together, petitioned, and fought against this freedom of speech, right? Now,
Okay.
if I get on Facebook and say something like, yo, you're a freaking dummy, whoop, flag, block his account. Why? Because I just literally bullied somebody when I wasn't bullying somebody.
And
I
that's
just
it.
made a
That's
statement,
the other thing that we didn't. See, bully is that is not constituted
even though that's
in
not bullying,
hate
but
speech.
right.
Yeah, I mean, no,
But
no,
it's
no.
not.
You said it. You said it right.
Yeah.
But it's not constituted under the First
Right.
Amendment under the hate speech, but that is constituted under hate crimes because see now you just committed a crime. Yep, his phone done went cuckoo again. But how do we protect our First Amendment rights? It's very clear and it's very simple. When it comes down to social media, we have to be careful. Uh, I put in with TikTok, I had put in a dispute to dispute the charge that we committed a violation, community violation, whether they overrule it or whether we have to wait out the suspension. That is a different story. Uh, Either way, it was like Jamel was saying before he got disconnected. His phone probably was dying, but he'll probably get it connected back. Um,
Yeah, I'm back. I'm back. I'm
we
sorry.
That's okay.
People keep calling.
That's all right. We have to take even I, even myself here on the Keep Hope Alive show, which is done through New Vision. Uh, we have to take responsibility of our actions. It is on the Keep Hope Alive show. It is our intention to tell the truth, and sometimes the truth hurts. And
It
the
does.
old saying that goes that the truth will set you free. I have house rules when you come in to respect the broadcast and that we agree to disagree. Now, if you disagree with me, there is a common way that we can come to an understanding to where if anything that is said here on the Keep Hope Alive show is offensive to anybody, I mean, if you don't step up and say, "Hey, I was offended," then how
How
am
am
I
I
to
gonna
know?
know what
How is my
to
guest,
say?
to
Right.
know? Yeah. So I mean, this is why we put it out there that we agree to disagree, but we disagreeing and we agreeing in love.
Hmm.
And it's not that we're there to offend you, is we're raising, and that's the whole purpose of the show, is to raise awareness.
Awareness. That's it.
You know, I mean, history is history.
But see, some
I
people don't
mean,
even like that though. They
I
don't
know,
like
I know.
they don't like you to be aware. So
No.
even
And see,
even
and
you
that's
is
just like to
sensitive.
go back. Yeah, that's just like to go back to what you were saying about the censorship. Is if you notice when that came about is that CBS, NBC, a lot of the news networks, CNN, all them, when they put stuff out on social media from third party,
Hmm.
you know that they always put up there, even in some movies that's played, your movie industry, they
Hmm.
put up the notification,
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
things and whatnot that is being said is not necessarily, in agreement with
Hmm.
the network, and it identifies them as being their own entity.
Because now
So
what that
that
does
way,
is that
with
takes fault.
Zimmerman, yeah,
So
see, like with
that takes
Zimmerman,
fault
it
off
don't
of them.
fall back on him. It
Right,
takes it off of him. Yeah.
but no. At that point, what the government was or the Congress was doing, or whatever organization that was. Let me not say things because I don't even know what organization that was. Whatever organization that was speaking against Mark at the time, they we're not taking responsibility for it. It's yours.
Yeah.
So what do you have to say to the people? Like, you get what
But
I'm
see,
saying?
if I got a guest on the show and the guest gets out of hand, I, that's why I put the disclosure out there the way I put
Hmm.
it out there, because see, I can't be responsible for what you say.
Right. So
You know,
at your own risk. Hey, look, the floor is open. You and in some of a way, it has to fall on someone when it comes down to
yeah, it's got to fall.
things
It's
that's
got to
being
fall
said.
on the person. It's got to fall on the person that's putting out the content.
Right. Yo, why would you allow
So
him to
that's
say
why
that?
I
Why
say
why did you
that's
like?
well, that's why I took the responsibility, because see, I was the one putting the contents out there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I took after looking at it, after researching it, after, everything else, I took it. Okay. That person, okay, whoever it was highly offended. Well,
Mm-hmm.
you could have did one or two things. You could either got off the broadcast and you
Mm-hmm.
didn't know, nobody held you a gun to your head or
To keep
held
you
you
on.
prisoner to
Mm-hmm.
listen to the broadcast.
Mm-hmm.
Or you could have chimed in and you could have gave your statement. The floor was open to anybody
Why?
in the chat and
Here's the
in the book and
here's
in
the
the
thing.
box. I
When
mean,
it comes down to attack on greatness and things that topics like that, why would I let you know that I'm your enemy when I could do this to you at any given moment?
well, yeah,
Like,
and
you get
this
what I'm
is why I
saying?
say
I'm
I
not.
think, yeah, this is why I think it should be a more tighter
Mm-hmm.
community thing. Look, we're just not going to let you come in and just because you got offended when you had an option to
Mm-hmm.
for us to block this individual for speaking truth or speaking speaking word to power. We're going to examine what that content was, and if we find it to
Mm-hmm.
be damning or disturbing, then we will notify that content on our decision on why
Mm-hmm.
we block them. Not
Yeah.
just because you put in a thing and then all of a sudden, right in the middle of my broadcast, and I'm doing a gospel vibe music show,
Mm-hmm.
and right in the middle of it, you're gonna block me? Why
Yeah.
didn't you block me when it was first made? Why did you
But
wait?
Yeah,
You
because
know,
they
that
had to.
was
It was a walkthrough. Somebody reported
yeah.
it,
But
and
see, but you also gotta understand how damaging that was to my credibility to my viewers.
no,
Oh, why is
actually,
he getting blocked right in the middle of of his broadcast? I mean, what was so, you know, some
here's
people on that perspective also you can lose clientele.
but here's
You
here's the
know,
awesome
you can
thing
lose
about
faith.
it. Bad one thing I learned. One thing I learned. I love this. I love it because I had to. Bad news is good news.
Right.
Good news is bad news. It, anything that if people want to discredit me, all that does is it leaves the other minds open to say like, "Why did this happen?" Now I want to know. I want to know what happened.
Yeah.
You ever look?
Yeah.
I told my wife. I said, "Okay, we got Blueface and Christian, right? These are two like little young little rappers in a
Well, you got a
relationship."
2 o'clock appointment.
Right? Yeah, I do. And this is my closing. Right? This is the point that I'm getting at. Right? When I'm talking about the news situation. Right? Here it is. Right? They're in a domestic violence situation, right? A lot of people have a lot to say when it comes to domestic violence, right? But
Yeah.
do you know every time you open up that video to watch their show or their channels that they're getting paid for that? So even if it's bad news, people still want to know what the bad news is about. So guess what they're going to do?
Yeah.
They're going to chime in.
Curiosity.
They're going to chime
Curiosity.
in. So take this, run with it, and continue to be you. And I'm not just saying to
Right.
you in general, I'm speaking to anybody who's listening to this broadcast, right? If anybody has a problem with you speaking out, and you're always gonna have people that's trying to stop you from speaking. They did it to Jesus, They did it to Malcolm X. They did it to Martin Luther King. They did it to John F. Kennedy. They did it to Abraham Lincoln. I could go on, about people who they assassinated or got rid of or took off air or ruined their careers from speaking. You know what I'm saying? Whatever
Right.
accusations that
Right.
they had to come up with to keep you from talking. Lupe Fiasco came out with this song called Words Never Spoken. After he did that song, you never heard a word from him again. If you listen to that song, there's nothing they could do about it. It's on there. But the government thinks that, okay, if we silence the king, right? If they take the head, then the body dies. Then who's going to follow
Mhm.
them then?
Mhm.
Because now it's the fear that they try to put in us to keep us from actually using our words and speaking out on things. Like again, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. You could speak against anything, just find a different way.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
it,
Yeah.
it, it taps into our like who we are as our culture and be like, why can't we be? You can still be you, but you know what?
Yeah.
Beat them at their
Yeah.
own
You're
game.
right.
You know
You're
what I'm
right.
saying?
You're right. Yeah. Yeah.
That was my
So
closing. You right? I got a dip. I'm going. I'm gonna get up out of here. Listen, I love everyone who's listening. God bless y'all. May God keep y'all. Stay strong. Stay true to who you are. If you don't believe in Jesus Christ, and if looking to give your life to Christ, Elder Joe is here to guide you. I'm here to guide you. Just be true to who you are and everything that you do. Those those
amen.
those will be my positive words. Listen, I gotta get
Amen.
ready because I know
All right,
wife
bro.
is gonna pull up soon.
All right. All right. Well, it's been great. Thank you for
Absolutely,
joining me. I know I called you on a short notice, but thank you for the obedience and thank you for the input and coming and sharing. Like I said, we're gonna
absolutely.
do it. We're gonna do it again because there's still more that can be said about this. So go do what
Whenever
you
you
got to
ready, you
do.
ready. Next time I'll be on
Yeah,
video. I'm sorry, I was cleaning
that's okay. I
rearranging my
I
room
know.
and stuff. So I love you
But
guys, man.
that's all right. We love you. Tell the family I send my love. Tell my beautiful granddaughter I said love her
Absolutely,
and give my beautiful grandbabies a hug and a kiss from Papa and Nana. And
absolutely.
then we'll hit you up. We'll hit you up a little later on.
Yes, sir. I love you.
How do we protect our First Amendment? It's very simple, ladies and gentlemen. And I want to thank everyone that's listening in. I hope this was helpful to you. This conversation, this broadcast, like I said, it's a lot more to it. But the best way to protect your First Amendment rights is to be very careful. Do your research first of all, and learn what your rights are under the Constitution. Learn what your First Amendment rights are. Learn what your freedom of speech rights are. And especially, I say this to all of our social media uh, 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 creators, podcasters, you know, I wish we had the protection that, you know, the freedom of press have, because there's so many things that need to be truth need to be talked about to power, that we are limited from. But in order to protect your rights, just make sure you do your research, and be mindful, and be careful on how you, as Minister Smith said, uh, be mindful on your approach. Uh, I took the responsibility, even though I disagreed with it. I still took it, and if with like everything comes a consequence. If that's the consequence I gotta take, is the 7-day suspension. I take it, but I don't apologize for it, because what was said during that content, during that broadcast, and you can go to our YouTube channel here, or you can go to our Facebook channel, and you can look at the video for yourself. Has parents gotten too soft, part two? And then you can make your own determination to whether or not it constituted hate speech or not. Uh, Please leave comments. Let us know what you think. Let us know what's on your mind. Whether you agree or disagree, it doesn't matter, because that's one of the strongest things that we believe here, is to agree to disagree. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just simply healthy and wholesome conversations. I'm gonna leave you today with this here on how to protect your First Amendment rights. One of the things it says is, what are the limits on free speech? I'm gonna leave you with this here. Here are the limits according to our government and our Supreme Court. Here's the limited limits. Here is the limits to free speech. Government can li- Government can limit some protective speeches by imposing time, place, and manner restriction. This is most common, done by requesting permits for meeting, for uh, railings of the demonications. Ooh, those big words. Not demonications, but this, uh, your protests. All right. Uh, uh, but a permit cannot be unreasonable wherever, nor called it be denied based on contents of your speech, your protest. You can, the proper way to do it, and especially if you're planning marches, if you're planning demonstrations, and that's what I was trying to get around, your demonstrations. They use a bigger syllable, but it breaks down. It just says demonstration when you apply for your permits. Okay, these are the limits of freedom of speech. Okay, is the time, the place, and the manner of restriction. Is what the government can, not to say that they will, but it's what the government can uh, put a limitation on your speech. Normally, as we said earlier in the broadcast, and the last thing that was mentioned in the question that was asked in the research that was given is is hate speech a violation of the First Amendment? No, it is not. It is clearly not. Unless it is an intent to cause bodily harm or some type of destruction, hate speech is not a part of the First Amendment. It falls under a totally different classification. Uh, so there you have it. There's how you protect your First Amendment right. Is we can say what we want to say, but it's how we say it is what makes the difference. All right. Thank you all for joining us today on Keep Hope Alive and our conversation for the day. Uh, we hope you share it. And again, like I said, you can leave your comments with us. Amen. You can go and watch the video that is in question that brought us to today's topic. So, with that being said, uh, everybody, I'm Uncle Joe, better known. Well, I should say it this way because this is the way everybody recognizes. I'm Elder Joe Smith Sr., better known as Uncle Joe, aka Uncle Joe. On behalf of the First Lady elect and myself and the New Vision family, we want to thank you for watching us today on our Keep Hope Alive show. And we hope to see you again real soon. And as we always say at the end of each broadcast on at New Vision, we want to leave you with if God can't go, don't you go. God bless you.